So I would like to thank the Chamber for the invitation to speak to you this morning. So Greece is on track to successfully conclude the ESM program, and I fully expect the Eurogroup to reach an overall political deal on Greece at their next meeting on 21st of June. That deal will have three components. Hopefully the closure of the fourth review and a disbursement to help build up a cash buffer. Secondly, a deal of a package of measures to ensure that debt is sustainable. And thirdly, putting in place a framework of support and surveillance for the post-program period. So Greece is on track to conclude the ESM program, but I guess the real challenge for Greece is to build on that and to actually lay the foundations for a lasting and sustainable recovery. Now, sustainable growth will require two things. It will require European partners to actually deliver upon their commitments and have a credible upfront package of debt measures. But it will also depend upon Greece, continuing to implement sound economic and fiscal policies over the medium and long run. I'd like to make 4 remarks on, let's say, lessons that we have drawn from other euro area countries which have exited programs. So the first is that an awful lot has been achieved in Greece. The imbalances which provoked the crisis, large fiscal deficits, a large current account deficit, these are essentially corrected, okay? But these are flow variables. The stock problems or the balance sheet problems, high debt, high unemployment, high NPLs, are still there. And the reality is, when you look at other countries, this is going to take 5, maybe 10 years to work these stock problems out. So it's very important to keep up the reform effort over the medium to long term. The second lesson I think we draw from the situation right now is, and again, one has to give full credit to Greece and the Greek authorities for the very significant structural reforms that have been enacted, especially in recent years. But when one looks at the deep structural reforms, and I'm talking about the impediments to doing business and investment and for the modernization of the public sector, the adoption of legislation is actually only the first step in the reform process. What really matters is actual implementation on the ground. So it's quite straightforward, for example, to establish in law an independent revenue agency, but this will only deliver if it's backed up with proper staff, IT, proper budget, and this is a process that will take several years to work out. So again, the message is it's very, very important that structural reforms continue to be fully implemented and fully owned over the medium term. Because again, for some of these reforms, the deep structural reforms, it's a 5 or 10 year project. It's not just a question of adopting legislation. And look, this is not going to be easy. We have seen in other euro area countries that have exited the programs that once the program is over, there's a natural tendency to relax, okay? Every country has gone through this. And I think, Greece will have to sort of find a way to ensure that by all means it regains its freedom in terms of economic and fiscal policies, but the internal momentum to keep up reforms has to come. 2 final points on lessons from other countries. The first would be, and it's a message really, I guess, aimed at the government, to think very, very carefully on how economic policy coordination will take place after the program ends. Now, Greece has been under a program for 8 years, and economic policy making has been centered around a program, MOUs, review missions, prior actions. Now, programs are very intrusive, they're sometimes very painful, but like them or loathe them, they actually provide a structure for organizing economic policy. And we will put in place a post-program surveillance framework, but it will be a different order or a different relationship. And I think the government needs to think very, very carefully about how it can keep some of the, let's say, stronger coordination features that were, let's say, put in place to manage the program, to ensure that the post-program framework and the growth strategy which is being implemented is actually coordinated. We've seen it in other countries that policies can tend to, you can tend to lose a little bit of control. It's a natural thing once the program ends. My final point in terms of lessons from other countries, and this may surprise you, is be careful of a growth bounce. Okay? Like other countries that come out of programs, there is often a rebound in growth due to confidence. It's a positive thing. And I very much hope and expect that this will actually happen in Greece. And Greece deserves to get a strong growth bounce. But it would be careful not to misinterpret what is, let's say, a temporary bounce in growth thanks to the exit or the expiry of the program. It should not be interpreted as meaning that all problems have been solved. The structural underlying problems need to continue to be addressed. So enjoy the growth bounce, but don't misinterpret it. Thank you.
I'll keep the note about the 5 or 10 year. A quick question to Mr. Costello. Do you think that the crisis in Italy might complicate it a little bit, the Greece's effort to exit to the markets?
Well, look, obviously the situation in Greece has had a negative impact upon the interest rate spreads of peripheral countries. And clearly it's not helpful for Greece, not only the Greek government, but also I think Greek corporates and banks who have to, who are paying a high risk premium when they also borrow on markets. At the same time, it actually maybe is sending a useful message at this key moment. I think it probably to the Greek authorities or to policymakers more widely, it's clear that whilst Greece is coming out of the program, it has tentatively regained market access, the situation remains fragile. And it will be very, very important that Greece continues to demonstrate, not just in the period up to the end of the program, but actually in the critical period after the program ends, that reforms are on track. Greece will not be able to afford or cannot afford, let's say, to have policy reversals which would undermine the confidence of institutions or markets in the months to come. It can also, I think, however, focus the minds of euro area partners. It's very important, as I said, that there's European partners now make the final effort to help Greece build a cash buffer, that they take upfront debt measures which can, in particular in the first 10 or 15 years after the program ends, to reprofile debt and minimize the exposure or the financing needs of Greece, so that Greece would have, let's say, a long runway that would allow growth to take off. So it's not helpful, of course, for Greece, but actually at the current moment it might actually focus minds.